rightly shown military forbearance in the face of Vladimir Putin's onslaught on a sovereign neighbor accompanied by nuclear saber rattling. But in a rare show of unanimity, economic sanctions, unprecedented in severity, have been imposed on Russia as the ruble crashed and Russia's economy became unplugged. International attention reverted on tenacious Ukrainian resistance and refugee evacuation from its war zone has also tended to focus on India's non-committal stand on Russian belligerence. Many quarters, while in New Delhi attracted criticism and ever reapproach from many quarters, while India's abstentions may be hard to justify on a moral ground, they are certainly rooted in real politics. While Putin's stated aim of denazifying a democratic nation headed by Jewish president may sound bizarre, however, relates to the violation of the guarantees sought and received on dissolution of USSR and NATO, would not expand even an inch eastward. This solemn undertaking was violated when NATO enlisted over a decade 10 former Warsaw Pact members. By 2021, 4 more Eastern Europe nations have joined NATO and Ukraine appear to be on verge of doing so. While the advance of NATO to its southern borders may have been seen by Putin as dire threat to Russia and to his dream of rescue Mir, the restoration of Russian glorious past, his resort to unilateral coercive military action against a sovereign state was deplorable act that deserved the universal condemnation that it received. The stance adopted by India has placed it amongst a minority of nations alongside China and Pakistan. There is an irrefutable logic in the argument that safeguarding the sources of 60 to 70% of its military hardware constitutes a prime national interest for India. Any interruptions in the supply of Russian arms or spares could have devastating impact on our defense posture vis-a-vis the China-Pakistan axis. Even after the diversification of sources, India remains trapped in the Russia's bear's jaw, jeopardizing the credibility of strategic autonomy. The de-Russification of the armed forces and the genuine indigenization of India's defense technological and industrial base. India dropped like a ripe plum into the arms of Moscow military industrial complex, which offered friendship price on rupee payment for advancement of weaponry. To initiate a process of progressive de-Russification of Indian armed force, not to switch sources but of becoming self-reliant, coming to second imperative, by blindly stamping every piece of military hardware produced in India with a catchy Atmanirbhar Bharat label, we are promoting dangerous self-delusion. It may be uplifting to see the battle tanks, warships and jet fighters held up as an example of self-reliance, but what is never mentioned is the vital subsystem like engines, guns, missiles, radars, fire control, computers, gearboxes under foreign license. Thus, while the public is led to believe that these all platforms are indigenous, many of the critical components are imported and spares continue to come from abroad. But it does not require selective identification of vital military technologies in which we are deficient and demand the initiation of well-funded, time-bound mission mode projects. A reason why we have failed, where peer nations like China, South Korea, Israel, Taiwan, even Singapore have succeeded spectacularly, the onus of this dismissal situation falls on the politicians whose intense focus on 5-year electoral cycle and indifference towards national security has prevented the devolution of a long-term vision for India's defense technology industrial base. This is what the article is all about. Next article is the plot, the change. Kerala High Court underlines film industry is not above the law, arms women against workplace sexual harassment. Ruling is significant in many ways for industry largely unorganized and driven by informal relationship. First, the court clarifies that the production unit is bound to maintain an international complaint committee if it employs 10 or more artists. The court also underlined the law extends to this production to any persons employed at workplace, whether on a regular, temporary, ad hoc or daily basis, either directly through an agent including contractor. Second, even while observing the organizations like Association of Malayalam Movie Artists do not have an employer-employee relationship with the film professionals, it asked them to form a joint committee to deal with sexual harassment of women to inspire the sufficient confidence to women professionals in the production unit. Why everybody loves this war? Except women, children and men of Ukraine caught as they were defining the grinds of Axis, European and American. NATO has now found a new raison d'etre for its relevance and has secured increased funding in Germany. Olaf Scholz, new chancellor, with his long record as a conscientious objector to war. The military-industrial complex activity as very underneath the facade of Western liberal democracy is not dead. The real cost of war is borne by citizens of Ukraine. Feel that NATO expansion into Eastern Europe could provoke Russia. Nor is Ukraine the first instance of such a problem. During the Cold War, Finland, bordering the Soviet Union, faced the choice between disastrous hostility and negotiated neutrality. Finlandization, the process through which a country decides not to challenge a more powerful neighbor while maintaining its sovereignty, has brought peace and prosperity to countries sandwiched between powerful adversaries. At issue today are two different ways of looking at global politics. First, propagated by US, believes in making the world safe for democracy, regardless of the cost borne mostly by people from the Vietnamese in the old days to Iraq, Syria, Libya, or Afghanistan now, mean to be brought into the folds of democracy. Second voice, one remembers Jawaharlal Nehru with a gratitude, is to let each country choose its own path and has obliged to respect the choices of others. The remarkable restraint with which India and Pakistan, two nuclear powers, have handled the recent mischances of an unarmed missile being fired from Indian territory into Pakistan and their consistent insistence that problems between Ukraine and Russia should be resolved through a negotiation should be a lesson in the restraint, reflection and mature diplomacy for a warming in West. Okay. US Admiral, China fully militarized at least 3 islands built in South China Sea. Beijing would not transform the artificial islands in contested waters in military base. South China Sea's partly archipelago is one of the most hotly contested region in the world. How COVID affects the heart. Let us look at what are the types of complications being reported. One complication is heart attack. Besides, these peoples are known to have an arrhythmia. The patients present with palpitation, they develop very fast heartbeats and the heartbeat is irregular, fast, and patients may feel giddy. Why definition of Assamese people is elusive? Who is a foreigner under Accord? Assam Accord was signed in 1985 by Centre and the Assam government with the All Assam Students Union and All Assam Ganasangram Parishad, which had spearheaded 1979 to 1985 Assam movement against migration from Bangladesh. It set March 24, 1971 as cut-off. Assam before midnight on the date would be an Indian citizen, while those who had after would be dealt with as foreigners. The same cutoff was used in updating NRC. Why it is important to define Assamese people? Class 6 of Assam Accord promises a constitutional, legislative and administrative safeguard to preserve, protect and promote the cultural, social, linguistic identity and heritage of the Assamese people. Class 6 is important because many felt that 1971 cutoff was inadequate to address the impact of migration. What are other terms for which no definition has been finalized? Kilongia refers to indigenous communities. The question is, who could be considered indigenous? Some are in favor of communities living in Assam before 1826 annexation with British India. Adi Basinda, also undefined, is generally used to describe the tribes who have lived several generations in Assam. River linking project in Gujarat, protest by tribals and political implications. Narmada river linking project, 211 crore was envisioned under 1980. It proposed the transfer of water from surplus region of Western Ghats to the deficit region of Saurashtra and Kutch. It proposed to link the three rivers, Par originating from Nasik in Maharashtra, flowing through Valsad, Tapi, from Satpura that flows through the Maharashtra and Surat in Gujarat, and Narmada originating in Madhya Pradesh. The link includes the construction of 7 dams: Jeri, Mohan Kavachali, Paihead, Chamasmandwa, Chikar, Dabdar, Kelkan. 3 diversion wires, Paiket, Chasmandwa, Chikar dams. Okay. The excess water in the interlinked Par, Tapi and Narmada rivers, which flows into the sea in the monsoon, will be diverted into Saurashtra and Kutch for irrigation. Eyeing turnaround BBNL to merge with BSNL by the month end. BBNL, a special purpose vehicle of Ministry of Communication, was incorporated in 2012 as a public sector unit. It was handled over the task of implementing the BharatNet project. Special purpose vehicle SPV is funded from the Universal Service Obligation Fund, which is raised from Universal Access Levy applicable to all telecom license holders. The merger of Bharat Broadband Network Limited (BBNL) and Bharat Sanchar Nigam Limited will be completed this month. This means that all of the Bharat network work being done on an India basis will come to BSNL. The government taken this policy decision. It came into effect from April 1, 2002 and mandated that all telecom service providers must pay percentage of their revenue into Universal Service Obligation Fund. As per Telecom License Agreement, telecom service providers have to pay 8% license fee on their revenue from sale of telecom services, of which 5% goes towards Universal Service Obligation Fund. With the merger of BBNL and BSNL, this fund, which currently stands at close to Rs 60,000 crore, is likely to go to BSNL and help the state-run telecos come out of its crunch. That's all. If you like the video, please do share and subscribe.